So back in my childhood, I was introduced to the Pokémon franchise by getting Pokémon Heart Gold for my birthday, and I loved it. Since I liked Heart Gold so much, I decided to pursue other games in the series and stumbled across Pokémon Mystery Dungeons Explorers of Time. Once again, I really liked the game and still have fond memories of it to this day. Remember the main plot and the twist, and even remember having a hard time with the final boss at the end. So I wanted to replay the game to see if it lived up to how I remember it to be. When I remembered, there's a Pokémon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky game. I had always thought that the games came out at the same time, and that they were basically different versions of the same game, kind of like Pokémon Diamond and Pearl are. After doing some research, I found out I was horribly wrong all these years, and that Explorers of Sky came out 2 years later and is more of a sister game to Explorers of Time and Darkness. Now knowing that, I decided to try it out for myself instead of playing Explorers of Time, and this is how it went. But before we dive into the real meat of the video, I do want to mention that there will be spoilers to basically the whole plot in this video. Even though the game did come out over a decade ago, this project was split up into different parts on my end, so the audio might not be exactly the same quality throughout. My apologies for that. And the gameplay might not always match up with what I'm saying in that exact moment, but it'll always be relevant to stuff I said or I'm about to say shortly after. And lastly, the times where I'm quiet is just to let the gameplay speak for itself, pretty much. I try not to do it too much, but it will happen every now and then. And with all that out of the way, I hope you guys enjoy my little summary of Pokémon Mystery Dungeons Explorer of Sky. To start the game, you have a little personality test of sorts that is basically used to determine which Pokémon you're going to play as. For the time, and really just my standards, I consider it to be a pretty wide cast of possibilities. Your choices are the normal Pokémon starters from Gen 1 to 4, Pikachu, Vulpix, Eevee, Vampy, Skitty, Shinx, and Riolu. In addition to your own Pokemon, you get to choose your partner Pokemon and travel with the whole game. I want to mention real quick that at the end of the personality quiz, they make you hold your thumb on the screen for a few seconds. It makes it look like the DS is analyzing your aura or something. I don't actually know if where you press matters or anything like that, but I think it gives it a bit more of a personal touch, which I like. Should mention that I'm playing on the Wii U Virtual Console, but the original games came out on the DS. So with the personality test out of the way, I ended up getting Charmander, which I thought to be really cool since I never used a fire type before in any of the dungeon games. And as my partner, I decided to go with Shinx. I just thought it'd be cool and different to not choose another starter, and I remember Pikachu being really good with one of his electric moves being able to hit everyone in the same room as you. Now normally in a Pokemon game, I am all about my tight matchups and pairings and weaknesses and resistances, but I didn't really think of how horribly we match up against ground types. Let's hope that doesn't bite us in the butt later. So we start off with a little cutscene with our character talking to someone in a big storm. The storm seems to be too much for us, however, and we end up getting separated from whoever this person may be. Then we cut on over to look at Shinx staring out into the sea, which I think the scenery is very pretty. All of a sudden, he looks over and is alarmed to see an unconscious Charmander just laying on the beach. We end up waking up, and with the help of Shinx, discovered that we are in fact a Charmander. We pretty much had the memory knocked right out of us, but the one thing that we remember is that we used to be human before, and now all of a sudden we are a Pokemon. Which, you know, is a little concerning. Either way, there's a Zubat and Coughing that run into us, who are basically petty thieves, who end up seeing Shinx's treasure and think it could be worth a lot and want to sell it, which they do manage to take it quite easily and scurry off into a nearby dungeon. The treasure means everything to him, so we decide to help him chase down Zubat and end up kicking their asses and getting the treasure back. After all that is said and done, Shinx mentions how he wants to form an exploration team and feels brave whenever he's with us, so asks if we can form a team together. We pretty much realize that now being a Charmander, that we're pretty much homeless now. So yeah, we decided to tag along as we really don't have anywhere else to go. We go to the Wigglytuff Guild, which is apparently famous around these parts, and after a Dugtrio looks at our feet, yeah, that's a thing in this game, we're let in, and the leader and his right-hand man Chatot decide to let us train at the guild to become our very own exploration team. A lot of the filler in this game, and what our training basically is choosing different missions that pop up on 2 bulletin boards. One is basically finding lost items or Pokemon, and the other board is capturing criminals. This is where some people may begin to find that the gameplay is repetitive, but if you just choose a couple of missions all at once in the same place and knock them out all at once, I find it to go by quite fast. Now is a good time to mention that exploring dungeons is pretty much exploring to find the staircase to go on to the next floor. You run into Pokemon that you have to fight, and find different items and money throughout. You level up and learn new moves along the way. A few training missions into the game, we meet Azrael and Meryl in Treasure Town, which I have to say is one of my favorite soundtracks in the game. Our first encounter with them, we learn that they lost an item that means a lot to them, but we can't really help them find it as we have training to do. The nearby Drowsy, though, says he thinks he knows where the item is and offers to help them look for it. On their way out, though, Drowsy accidentally bumps into us, and weirdly enough, we start to feel a little dizzy afterwards until bam! We get a flash across our eyes and start seeing a scene take place. We get a vision of Drowsy and Azrael, and we're not too sure what's going on. Basically, it looks like Drowsy is threatening to hurt her if she doesn't do what he wants, and Azrael cries for help. Afterwards, we run back to the guild, and Chatot decides we're worthy enough to try to take on a criminal for the first time, and Bidoof is here to help us choose an easy one to go after. The board gets updated, and Shinx starts shaking on the spot, which is concerning to Bidoof. Looking at the board, it turns out that Drowsy is actually a wanted criminal, which the discovery of that is why Shinx is shaking. Shinx pretty much grabs us by the wrist, and we decide to chase after him. We end up running into his brother, or sister, I forget the genders, who tell us that he ended up getting separated from the group, and Drowsy took Azrael up ahead. So we end up giving chase, and show up at the same dungeon that Drowsy and Azrael went in. We make it to the end, after getting crit by a Starly and having to try again, and find out that Drowsy was lying about their lost item and really just needed Azrael to fit into a small little cave because it's rumored to be treasure in there. The scene that we saw earlier in our vision plays out exactly as we saw it earlier. He turns out to be our first boss fight, we kick his ass, and then we return to town. Honestly, they talk about this really early in the game, but different characters bring up the fact that more bad Pokemon are appearing, and it probably has to do with the time gears being stolen. Basically, time gears are what allow the flow of time to continue to move forward, and if one is taken away, time stops in the nearby region it was in. Anyone and everything, if in the area when the time gear is stolen, will not be able to move and will be frozen in time forever. It's not an instant freeze in time, which makes actually being able to run away with them make a little more sense. The whole time gear thing is really the main plot in the story, and will keep popping up now and then. After the whole Drowsy incident, we find out that there's new members that have decided to join the guild. We end up running into them, and it turns out to be the Zubat and Coughing that we beat up earlier in the game. Everyone starts acting all tough, like they can all beat each other up, when Coughing mentions that their boss wasn't around last time, which is why they lost. As we ponder what he can mean by that, the music plays, and big ol' Skunk Tank walks in the building claiming to be their boss and the leader of Team Skull. No, not the Pokemon Sun and Moon Team Skull, but the Team Skull in this game, which only consists of these three. To show off his power, he basically farts in their faces, and that's really the end of that. Around the same time, Chatot announces that he and Wigglytuff decided it's time to make a big trip to find a place called Fogbound Lake. A trip and only a select few members get to go. Team Skull tries to mess with our training to prevent us from going so they can explore and find the treasure all by themselves, but Wigglytuff is just too darn nice and decides to take everyone anyway, foiling their plan. Fogbound Lake is a place that no one has actually been able to find, and has just been rumored to be in a certain area. So our goal, as the guild, is to split off into different teams and to search for it. Shinx and I end up going in the right direction, and find a statue of Groudon just kinda chilling there. We touch the statue, and get another strange vision like we did with our encounter with Drowsy. We actually get two visions back to back, weirdly enough. This time, the event that took place pretty much just showed us to put a rock that Shinx found when we first arrived here into an indentation in the statue. Turns out, that's the solution to the puzzle, and the statue activates, shooting a laser into the sky, which clears up all the fog in the area. With the fog being gone, it's revealed to us that Fogbound Lake is up on a really tall, almost floating island, and that is why no one has really been able to find it before. Now all we have to do is somehow find a way up there. Out from the nearby woods come Team Skull. Now that we solved the puzzle, they want to knock us out and come steal all the glory. A big fight is about to start until... So yeah, Wigglytuff comes out of the woods too, just happening to chase an apple that he dropped that ended up rolling all the way over to us. After Wigglytuff learns that we solved the puzzle, he sends us along to go check out the island, and tells Team Skull that we should be the ones to do all the work, and that the rest of them will wait there waiting for our report. This is pretty much the exact opposite of Team Skull's plan, as they wanted to explore and get all the glory for themselves. So they see no other option but to take on Wigglytuff in a fight and catch up to us afterwards. It's not really explained ever how we get up to the floating island at all, but either way, we make our way and have to deal with a few dungeons. As we're going through the dungeons, it's revealed to us that Wigglytuff completely destroyed him in a 1v3, not even close. At the end of all the dungeons, we get to fight who I would consider to be the first major boss of the game, Groudon. Shinx and I are both terrified, and rightfully so, because of course the first boss fight would be a ground type. Turns out, knowing Smokescreen is just OP in this game, so Groudon honestly wasn't really much of a problem. Smokescreen is pretty much gonna be the key in handling many of the bosses. After we take out Groudon, we find out that it wasn't actually him, but rather, he was just a hologram created by Yuxi that he uses to protect the lake. Apparently, if that doesn't work, Yuxi just has the power to wipe all of anyone's memories, but specifically only the memories that have to do with finding the lake somehow. But we plead our case of Yuxi, and he decides not to wipe her memories after all. The rest of the guild catches up with us, and Yuxi decides to show us why the lake is so hidden and protected. Surprise! There's a time gear here. In exchange for not wiping our memories, we promise Yuxi not to tell anyone about this place, or about the time gear. And then a day or two later, the time gear ends up getting stolen anyway. Between the time that we leave the lake and the gear gets stolen, we see that Dusknoir, apparently a famous explorer that everyone loves and is known for being so smart, arrives in Treasure Town. He's so smart that he actually knows what our little visions have been. They're pretty much just visions of the past or future that gets activated when we touch something sometimes, and is called a dimensional scream. I can't quite remember, but it's either because of him or Yuxi that we find out that the thief stealing all the time gears is a Pokemon named Grovyle. At this point in the game, I believe he has 3 out of the 5 gears, so basically, everyone in Treasure Town, the cops, and everyone in the guild teams up in trying to take down Grovyle. Dusknoir offers some suggestions as to where the remaining time gears might be, and the goal is to get to them before Grovyle does. We split off into different teams again, and we get assigned to check out some desert with a bunch of quicksand. So it's time to use our logical deduction skills. There really is nothing here but the desert and the quicksand pits, and aside from those pits, there's nothing. Wait a second. If there's only quicksand, that's the key to this mystery. There's no way forward, or is there? So we jump to the quicksand, and actually sink through it, and fall into an underground cave. Pretty neat. Another dungeon or two later, and we get to an underground lake at the end of the cave. For some reason, all these time gears seem to be at lakes. Mesprit shows up and tells us that Yuxi warned him that the time gear he was guarding was stolen. But I guess he never bothered to tell him who stole it, because he thinks it was us. And we had to smack some sense into him. As he's laying there defeated, he asks us who it was that stole the time gear after we tell him that we're the good guys and that it wasn't us. A mysterious voice is like, "That would probably be me!" And then we turn to see that Grovyle is standing right behind us, coming to take the time gear. He pretty much proceeds to bitch slap Mesprit and us. And then us again. Takes the time gear pretty much unimposed. And we have to book it out of there before the removal of the time gear ends up freezing us in time. We make it back to the guild, and each little team gives their report on what happened. We're the only ones that really did anything, and Bidoo found a cool looking rock, so we don't really know what to do next when all of a sudden Dusknoir is like, "Touch the rock." Wait, what? Touch the rock, Blaze? Okay, fine, no need to yell. We touch the rock and get a vision of the cave it was found in. More specifically, we see Grovyle kicking Azelf's butt and going to steal the last time gear. Dusknoir believes that this may be a vision of the future, so we go to the cave in an attempt to stop Grovyle from taking the last time gear. We get to the cave, solve an easy crystal puzzle, and make our way to another lake with a time gear. We arrive just in time to see that Grovyle has beaten Azelf and is about to dive in the lake and steal the time gear. Out of nowhere, Azelf is like, "I thought I could possibly lose, so I set up a failsafe."
Excuse me, what?
And BAM! A bunch of crystals pop up, completely blocking the way to the time gear. Grovyle is pretty much like, "Well, if I have to murder you to get to it, then so be it." At that point, we step in to take on Grovyle in an actual fight. Which we actually win. But the game pretty much takes away our victory in the cutscene. Grovyle is about to land the final blow when
Houdini!
Dusknoir pops out of nowhere and blocks the hit. Through their conversation, we learn that they actually know each other. A big strap is gonna go down between the two of them when Grovyle himself Houdini's out of there. So at the end of the day, the time gear is still safe behind the crystals. When we get back home, we learn that Dusknoir has a big announcement to make, and this is a pretty big plot point, and where things get a little more complicated. Basically, the reason why Dusknoir is so smart, and the reason he knows Grovyle, is because they're both from the future. So yeah, there's time travel in the game now. He also explains that once all of the time gears are stolen, that it would eventually lead to the world's paralysis. So we all know that Grovyle still wants that time gear, so the next plan of action is for Dusknoir and the 3 Lake Guardians to set up an ambush where the last time gear is, to catch him. Which actually works. With the capture of Grovyle, Dusknoir literally ties him up with rope and announces to everyone in Treasure Town that he has to go back to the future and take Grovyle with him. Never mind how the portal of the future got there. Before he leaves, he has to speak with me and Shinx. He pretty much tells us that this isn't goodbye for us, does the whole Scorpion get over here thing. Get over here! And drags us into the future with him. We pass out during the trip through the portal, but we wake up to find ourselves in a prison cell. Yeah, that's a good sign. And we also get a cutscene where it shows Dusknoir taking orders from a big shadowy silhouette, which I'll just tell you right now is Primal Dialga. Primal Dialga is just normal Dialga really, but he just lost all sense of reason and is basically overcome by darkness. Soon after we wake up, a group of Sableye come in and I think put us in body bags, carry us out, and then tie us to pillars to find that Grovyle is next to us. Dusknoir orders were to kill all 3 of us, and lets the Sableye do all the dirty work. Grovyle whispers to us that the Sableye main attack are Fury Swipes, and to kill us, they have to cut through the ropes first, and that's our chance to escape. Once we're free from the ropes, we attack. Grovyle uses another flashbang, while using his move Dig, to bury us all on the ground so they think we ran off in another direction. Grovyle helps us escape, and tells us that the whole planet has become paralyzed in the future. Not really sure why Dusknoir and Grovyle and the Sableye can all move around, but whatever. We're not sure why this ended up happening either, as we got all the time gears back from Grovyle, and the 3 Lake Guardians put them all back where they belong. Oh, and we also tried our Dimensional Scream, but for some reason it doesn't really work in the future. After some dungeons and a boss battle, Grovyle explains that he went back in time with the help of Celebi and was stealing the time gears in order to actually prevent the world's paralysis, and that Dusknoir is Primal Dialga's underling who chased Grovyle into the past to try and stop him so that history can't be changed and Dialga ends up turning into his primal state. So right now, the plan is to find Celebi, go back in time so we can return to our normal world, and help Grovyle steal the time gears. We find Celebi, and for the fun of it, the game developers decided to make it a shiny Celebi. And we travel with her basically so she can take us to her own time portal. To try and simplify this as much as I can, basically, we arrive at the portal where Dusknoir found out we were going and was waiting for us with some Sableye. And we're all like, haha, you can't stop us. We have Celebi's time traveling powers on our side. And Dusknoir is all like, oh yeah? And then we hear a big roar, and we turn to see that Primal Dialga itself came to say hello and stop us. Celebi can travel through time, but Dialga can control it. Basically, Dialga can stop Celebi from time traveling. But either way, we try to time travel anyway because we really don't have another option here. Primal Dialga is pretty much just really slow, and we do manage to travel a little bit in time towards the future before Dialga cuts us off. Getting taken out of Celebi's time travel, we end up in a different spot than where we started. We happen to be just standing next to the big time portal that I guess Dialga can control for some reason, so we hop in the portal and travel back to the present world. So a plot point that I forgot to mention is that right before we do our little time skip of Celebi, we learned that we were indeed once human, and we were actually working alongside Grovyle to help change history and steal time gears. A big storm at the beginning of the game was actually turbulence from time traveling, and that somehow separated me from Grovyle the first time we went through, and somehow changed me into a Pokemon. Yeah, it's never really explained how that one happened. Grovyle tells us that to stop the planet's paralysis, we have to take the time gears and place them at a place called Temporal Tower. The tower is where normal Dialga lives before he went all primal in the future. Basically, it's a big tower that controls time, but it's all falling apart, so we need to prevent that. So we run back to the guild to tell everyone all this. They believe us, and Grovyle goes to get all the time gears again, this time with no resistance. The problem with Temporal Tower is that no one actually really knows where it is, so we're off searching for it while he goes to get the gears. Wigglytuff tells us to go see the really old and really wise Torkoal to see if he knows anything. We met with Torkoal earlier, just didn't really have room to fit all of that in. He tells us about an old legend that gives us some clues about where to go. Remember towards the very beginning when I mentioned Shinx was looking at his treasure that he values very much? Torkoal tells us that that's basically the key to finding the hidden path to get to the tower. Wigglytuff says that he recognizes seeing the pattern a long time ago when he and Chatot went exploring to a place called Brine Cave. So we all decide to go there the next day. While everyone else prepares, Wigglytuff is all like, I gotta peace out for the day. Chatot, you're in charge. So it's the next day, and we all split off into little teams again. This time it's us two and Chatot. We're about halfway through the dungeon when... Wait, what's that music? So yeah, Team Skull decided to show up again, wanting to get revenge on Wigglytuff by going after us. So for the second time this game, they steal Shinx's treasure, and Chatot gets all pissed and chases after him. When me and Shinx catch up, we find Team Skull laying on the ground, very beat up and unable to move. We already knew beforehand that there was going to be a tough boss in here, and they mopped the floor of Team Skull. Chatot, however, was on ahead, and we catch up to him. The boss of this cave is a Kabutops and 2 Ammonite who try to sneak attack us. Their plan is foiled as Chatot throws himself in front of us as a human shield, and oh, he ain't looking so pretty after that. Once the actual fight commences, we just kick their ass. And after, we get to see how badly Chatot is injured, as all of a sudden, Wigglytuff and Grovyle show up. Wigglytuff pretty much filled Grovyle in and brought him to us, and shortly after, the rest of the guild gets here too. Grovyle takes a look at him and says he'll live, but needs to get back to the guild quickly. So the rest of the guild members bring him back as Shinx, Grovyle, and I keep pressing forward to save the world. A little further into the cave, we see a spot that matches the pattern on Shinx's treasure, so we shove it in the little indentation. It shoots a beam out across the sea, which summons Lapras, a Pokemon who knows how to get to the Hidden Land, which is just where Temporal Tower is pretty much. Remember when I said Wigglytuff was peacing out for a bit? Well, really what happened is that Wigglytuff came down to the cave all by himself and had a conversation with Lapras explaining everything going on and letting him know that we're chill and the good guys. Wigglytuff met Lapras many years ago, but we don't have time for that story. We learned from Lapras that the reason Temporal Tower has been hidden from everyone is because Dialga hid it in a gap of time. He hid it in a gap of time. I'm not even going to try and understand that one. So let me make sure I understand this right. We cross the Sea of Time and arrive at the Hidden Land. The Hidden Land is basically a big floating island, and Temporal Tower itself is, well, a floating tower. But it's higher than the island, so Lapras informs us that we have to take the Rainbow Stone ship in order to reach it. A dungeon or two later, and we get to the ship. Grovyle reads a sign that tells us to put Shinx's treasure in the hole in the middle to activate the ship. But before we can even think about doing that, Dusknoir shows up. Dialga sent them back here to the present world with us, and Dusknoir knew we'd get here eventually, so he was just kinda waiting for us the whole time. His plan is to kidnap us all again, and shove us all back into the future, paralyzed world with him, through the portal in which he came. So Dusknoir and his little army of Sableye fight the three of us, and we win. Grovyle tells Shinx to see if he can get the ship started, while Grovyle and I make sure Dusknoir doesn't do anything. As Shinx leaves, Dusknoir talks to us saying that if we go through with this, Dusknoir, Grovyle, and I will pretty much just die and cease to exist since we're all Pokemon from the future, and the future where the world is paralyzed will no longer become a reality if we're successful. We pretty much tell him that we don't care anyway, as it's for the greater good. Oh, yeah, and I guess Celebi in the future will disappear too. In hearing this, Dusknoir still wants to stop us and gets a last sudden burst of power. Realizing Dusknoir is going to be too much of an inconvenience for us to handle, Grovyle gets up, runs towards Dusknoir, grabs him, and pushes him towards his time portal that he came through. The whole, if I'm going down, I'm taking you with me kind of deal. Before Grovyle and Dusknoir go through the portal, Grovyle throws us the time gears he collected, and now it's all up to me and Shinx to complete this mission. Shinx came to check up on us, and only saw the part where Grovyle threw the gears at us and then went through the portal, and that's it. That's the last time we will ever see Grovyle again. A Pokemon who came to this world as our partner, and who has been accused of being a twisted criminal when all he was trying to do was save our world, is now gone to us forever. Having to move on though, we get on the Rainbow Stone ship and head towards the tower. The tower itself is just some really long dungeons. We get to the top of the tower though, and see the slots where we can fit in the time gears, stop the tower from collapsing any more than it already has, and save the world. As we approach the slots, a bolt of lightning strikes down and the sky gets all black for a second. We get called vandals and get blamed for wanting to destroy the tower. We insist that we aren't, but he's having none of it. And by he, I mean Dialga. Since Temporal Tower has already taken a lot of damage and big parts of it has collapsed, Dialga, in this world, is a weird half primal state and half not. Either way, this affects his judgment enough that he thinks we're threats, and that he has to fight us as our final boss in the game. Dialga was not an easy fight. Every move that he did was nearly a one-shot against me or Shinx. It took very careful tactics of when to use Smokescreen, along with different sleep and stun items, and a lot of save saving. We were so weak compared to this thing that I literally had to find the one single perfect way of execution in order to beat him. And I was kinda dumb and maybe only brought one revive and very few healing items. But either way, we ended up finding the perfect way and beat Dialga. As the tower nearly collapses, Shinx runs to put the time gears into slots in the tower. We put them in and more lightning starts to appear and the tremors get a lot worse. It looks like we were just a few seconds too late. But looks can be deceiving. Big flash of white happens, all the storm clouds and lightning disappear, and Diaga is back to normal, explaining to us that we saved the tower from completely collapsing and that we saved the world. Diaga thanks us for saving the world, tells us that time has been restored to the places that were frozen after taking the time gears away, and with that, it's time to go home. On our way home though, we begin to feel a little funny, and our tummy starts to glow. We know exactly what's going on. It's just like Duskstorm mentioned. The future of the world has been saved, meaning that we come from a future that doesn't exist. So by all laws of the Pokemon universe, I should not exist. Listen, there's no way that I could ever do this ending any justice in this little playthrough summary video. I have a lot of reasons why this probably hits me harder than most people, but I did end up crying for a bit when I saw this ending. Shinx just does such a great job of showing his sadness and his grief. He straight up just has a complete and total breakdown that completely differs from the whole rest of the game. Or at least that's what I think of it. If you're someone who isn't open to try and get emotionally invested into a game's atmosphere or characters or whatever, then I'm sure this ending wouldn't be as emotional. So, my final thoughts. Is this a super big difference between the Explorer of Time game? Not really. They add some new features and characters. The plot is pretty much 95% the same. I got this game for $10 for the Virtual Console, as I mentioned, and I have to say that it's absolutely worth that price. It's possible that it's just a bunch of nostalgia that's making me still like this game as much as I do, but overall, I'm really happy that I played through the game and would recommend the game for anyone who likes dungeon crawlers, and who likes or at least doesn't mind the style of graphics. I hope you guys enjoyed my little playthrough summary of Pokemon Mystery Dungeons Explorer of Sky. I do realize that it's really just become a summary of the game's plot at this point, more than my actual playthrough, but this video is probably a little long for my liking, and unfortunately I can't fit everything into it, or it'd be so much longer than it already is. Either way, this is the first time I try something like this, and may decide to do more of other games I like. Keep an eye out every now and then in case I do upload more like this, and I'll see you guys next time.